Hello everybody and welcome to Toyah at Home. Behind me is an incredibly large painting by P.J. Crook, and in it I am there, and PJ made this painting when I did a documentary with Lee Cox and Hazel Gower about the artist Rolinda Sharples. She was a Bristol-based artist and she was born in 1793 and she passed from this world in 1838. Now, the reason we were making this guerrilla documentary in Bristol was at the time, and this was about... oh my goodness, I think it must have been the mid-1990s we made this. None of her work was exhibited in either the National Portrait Gallery nor in the Bristol Art Museum. And she was considered a bit of a social butterfly during her time, but she was a very wealthy, talented woman. And what she used to do was she would take the ship from Bristol Dock over to New York Harbour, and she would paint portraits of dignitaries arriving in New York. And then she'd come back and she'd buy a coach and horses. She would buy her own homes. She supported her mother. She invested her money in the building of the Clifton Suspension Bridge, but she was not being exhibited and her paintings were not being kept very well. In fact, they were falling into disrepair. So when Lee Cox, Hazel Gower and myself and PJ Crook ascended on the curator of the Bristol Museum, this is an actual event, to challenge him in the basement of the Art Museum as to why Rolinda Sharples' paintings were falling into major disrepair and not being exhibited. This was a turning point. And from then on, she was exhibited in the National Portrait Gallery in London and in Bristol. And for me, what really affected me making this was that she was an influencer in her time and she influenced men. So she became known for painting things like The Trial of Colonel Breton, which so many people were kind of in this painting. It was a really complex painting. I mean, there were hundreds of people with great detail on their faces. She also did the Bristol riots, the burning of the Mansion House, Queen Square, very complex painting. And remember, this was early 1800s. And then she did another very influential painting called Stoppage of the Bank. Now, you might think, why was this influential when she wasn't exhibited? Well, everyone copied her. They copied her without any reference to her or her work. So all of those three paintings I mentioned to you were all copied by men, and the men became acclaimed for them. And I just wanted to flag that up because I very rarely film in front of this painting, but making that documentary was one of my proudest moments as an actress because it really changed history at that time. Now, I'm very excited because we have a lovely song that we are featuring today, and it's Indecision, and it's from the Old Grey Whistle Test. I remember writing the lyric for this song in 1979 for sheep farming in Barnet because we were on the road, the Toyah band was on the road, and whenever we were in Birmingham, I would stay with my parents, Grove Road, Kings Heath, Birmingham. And on this particular day, I got up in the bedroom that I spent 18 years, the first 18 years of my life in, and I came up with this idea. I seek, deceiver of deception, creation of my deprivation. I see a split disposition. I will, I won't, decide by indecision. And it just came into my head. I wrote it on the very same table I read Lord of the Rings off. You know, this table in my bedroom where so much of my artwork started, where all my poems started, where I started to write lyrics. And it just came to me in the bedroom. And I was so excited about it. When I took it along to Joel and the rest of the band, that was Joel, Steve Bray, Charlie Francis, Pete Bush. And I said, I've got this lyric for this idea Joel's had, and we just wrote the song very, very quickly, and of course it ended up on Sheep Farming in Barnet. And it became a Toyah classic because the audience would just erupt and pogo and go mad. And then we added this back into the set just before lockdown. And my goodness, what a lot of fun this was to perform. But what I love about this song is it represents a very stylistic approach of the late 80s within the punk movement, where there's a lot of kind of yay going up very high, and you will get this in this performance from 1980 of the Old Grey Whistle Test. There's I seek a deceiver of deception. So everything goes up at the end, and there's a lot of echo, space echo, in fact, which was a loop machine, very fashionable at the time, that was put on the voice. So you get deceiver of deception, shun, 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 shun. It's very stylized and very of that time. And a lot of female artists, especially Nina Hagen and Lena Lovitch, we all kind of used that voice. And I was very inspired by both of those female singers. And it became very super stylized, and Indecision is like that, and you will hear that in this live performance on the Old Grey Whistle Test. Now, the Old Grey Whistle Test itself, this particular time was recorded in Edinburgh. I don't think it was usually recorded in Edinburgh, but it might have had something to do about the availability of the presenter at that time and Jerry Lee Lewis, who was also on the show. And what I remember about this was my management were determined that I was never going to meet Jerry Lee Lewis or be alone with him because of his history of liking younger girls. Well, I was 23. I was far too old for Jerry Lee Lewis. And I wanted to meet him. I grew up with his music. I grew up with his movies. You know, every Saturday afternoon on black and white TV, you would get a movie, and Jerry Lee Lewis would quite often be in these movies. So I snuck away in the studio and I knocked on Jerry Lee Lewis's dressing room door, and I went in and talked to him, and he was gracious and brilliant. I talked about his movies. He wanted to know about punk. And I just sat there enraptured by the history of this man and how he was so energetic on stage, which I am very energetic on stage, and that how he and Bill Haley would use physical energy, so did Elvis Presley, to perform their music and be involved with their music. The music moved through their bodies, and that is something that is very much still with me today, that music moves me physically. And I spent about an hour with Jerry Lee Lewis, just getting to know him, enjoying his company, and being able to share the things that inspired us, and how music to both of us was an energetic experience. I also think at this particular time in 1980, when I was evolving and ascending as a star, not only as an actress, but as a singer within this band, we were having success. Obviously signed to Safari, and Sheep Farming in Barnet was my first album. But it was getting to the point where the industry could no longer ignore us. And it was interesting getting the Old Grey Whistle Test, because I think that our kind of record pluggers really had to push for it, because even though I was a highly respected actress and had been nominated for awards by this time, people were still very wary of what I did and how I sounded and how I looked. But there is a very, very famous performance on the Old Grey Whistle Test by John Otway, where he completely smashes up the studio and probably had to go to hospital afterwards because he had a really bad fall. So when you perhaps compare what you're about to see me do on the Old Grey Whistle Test 1980 against John Otway's very famous performance, you can just Google it, John Otway, Old Grey Whistle Test. He's a gorgeous man, but he had this reputation, a bit like Jerry Lee Lewis, of just going off on a tangent and doing things that people could not control. Very exciting, very brilliant performer, and I've done a lot of festivals with him in the past years. you know, you think, well, why do people have a problem with me when John Otway could smash up a studio? And we were high energy, and this performance, I think, is fantastic. It is very stylized. It's very of the moment. So let's press play. 4th of March, 1980. It's a fabulous beginning because we're quite centered. We're on stage A. You've got the absolutely brilliant Charlie Francis. I mean, my goodness, he was one of my favoritist ever human beings to know and work with. He was so cool. He was so politically strong as well. He was very well informed, very well read, and he did not compromise on anything. I look fabulous. I'm in what I call the IER cloak outfit. You've got Joel Bogan, who is in Melissa Kaplan as well. He's in red trousers and a Melissa Kaplan top. I've got my Melissa Kaplan IER outfit. I've even got the beautiful big brass bangles. My hair needs a good haircut. It's right over my eyes. You've got Pete Bush on keyboards, Steve Bray on drums. Now this is energetic, but it's controlled. And you've got the stylized vocal of the see, and then you get a lot of kind ah, which are things that I kind of used because I wanted my voice to be like an instrument. And I believe this probably was the same with Nina Hagen and Lena Lovitch at the time, was that we were using our voices as expression and as instrumentation as well as lyricized vocals. So I'm very bouncy, but not over bouncy. I can see beautiful Charlie Francis bouncing a little bit. But I think this is a really lovely performance of the time. And I was so proud to be on the Old Grey Whistle Test. And it's a good live performance. We were on tour, but I'd learnt to kind of keep my voice. I'd learnt to not overuse my voice and lose those top notes. Finally explode, see. Now, what's interesting there is I'm not using the higher octave. I'm actually using the octave lower, and that's probably because I am on the road. See a seek, see a seek, see a seek. I remember coming up with that in my bedroom in Grove Road, Kings Heath. See, see, see. And all the vocal effects. And what surprises me about this is there's no dry ice. And at this time, everything had dry ice. I think it's really lovely. It's a really cute performance of a really great fun song. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Robert is away at the moment, and today I am playing the Stone Valley Festival in Newark, and tomorrow it's a great honour to be playing the Sandringham Estate in Norfolk. So we're wildly excited about this bank holiday weekend. Tonight I'm going to be doing Objects of Desire on my own because Mr. Fripp is on his way back from New York State, having been teaching there all week. Tomorrow we have a compilation Sunday lunch, and then we are back live doing Sunday lunch the following week. And also we're getting ready for the Anthem Toyah at Home special, which promises to be an absolutely brilliant visit down memory lane for this fantastic album's re-release on the 9th of September. It's a very exciting time. And we're getting closer and closer to the Anthem tour and to the Billy Idol dates. It's a great season, and as the Great British Summer comes to an end, hopefully we'll have a bit of a revisit of summer in September. I just can't wait for autumn. It's going to be a brilliant autumn. So thank you everyone for watching. I hope you've enjoyed Indecision. See you tonight for an Objects of Desire, and tomorrow for a very fun revisit to some of our bloopers on Sunday lunch. Lots of love, everybody. Mwah!
See See.